Good evening. I'm going to call to order the regular council meeting of Monday, February 24th, 2025. And we will begin with the acknowledgement of treaties of peace and friendship. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq peoples. This territory is covered by the treaties of peace and friendship, which Wolastoqiyik, Mi'kmaq, and Passamaquoddy peoples first signed with the British Crown in 1726. The treaties did not deal with surrender of lands and resources, but in fact recognized Mi'kmaq and Wolastoqiyik title and established the rules for what was to be an ongoing relationship between nations. Well, Alan, thank you. The oath of office. We do hereby accept the office of council and will diligently, faithfully, and impartially discharge to the best of our ability the duties of the office as may be imposed upon us by law. Next is the moment of reflection, and I'll hand it over to Deputy Mayor Gutierrez McDonnell.
Moment of reflection for February 2025. Paul Culligan, formerly of Beldoon. Jim Gooden, formerly of Jacket River. Ricky Lapointe of Lorne. Gertrude Gallant of Jacket River. Kelly Gooden of Lorne. And Claude Elslager of Lorne.
Can I get a moment of silence, please? Thank you. Next is the adoption of the agenda. Are there any proposed changes? If not, can I get a mover for dash 14?
M 2023-02-24-14, that the agenda be adopted as presented.
And a seconder?
I'll second it.
On the question, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion passed. If any council members have a statement of conflict that they need to register, please do so with the clerk. The adoption of minutes. This is from the Committee of Whole Council meeting January and the regular council meeting of the 21st of January. Can I get a mover for that motion, please?
M 2025-02-24-15, that the minutes of the Committee of Whole Council meeting of January 13, 2025, and the regular meeting of January 21st, 2025 be adopted as presented.
I need a seconder.
I'll second it.
On the question, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion passed. Any business arising from the minutes?
I do, Your Worship. At the last public meeting, I did a presentation concerning Crime Stoppers, and I was asked the question during that public meeting about the identification of when people either call in to the Crime Stoppers line, how they are not identified based on the phone call, whether it be through a cell phone or a home line. So I did discuss this point with my colleagues at the last meeting, and the 1-800-222-TIPS 8477 line, which is the Crime Stoppers line, is not under any identification. That line is an 800 number in all of New Brunswick going into one operator, and that line is not monitored under any conditions. I can also say that the program works very well, because at our last meeting of Crime Stoppers, a tip was paid for a very, very serious crime that was solved here in our area. So it's confirmation that the program works. It's confirmation that there is no identification, and at the end of the day, I wanted to make it very clear, and I thank the person who asked that question because it was an answer even I didn't know. But with that said, the answer is, has been stated by the members who banned that line. There is no identification on that line.
Okay, thank you. Next, under presentations, petitions, and delegations, we have a presentation this evening from Chief Terry Richardson, who is from Pabineau First Nation, and Dr. Luc Demarche, who's also here representing Pabineau First Nation, and Dr. Demarche has a doctorate in Native Studies. We want to welcome you both. We want to thank you, and you're welcome, Terry, to take to the podium.
Well, thank you, Mayor, Council. If I knew there was such a big crowd, I would have worn more of my Sunday clothes, I think, but I didn't realize there was a bigger crowd. I appreciate the chance to come before you and present a little bit of what we're doing in Pabineau, a little bit with the work that's being done at the Port of Belledune as well, and a little bit of an understanding of why First Nations are involved in all of this organization and stuff that's happening within the port, which is why I have Dr. Demarche with me, who basically worked with us as a special counsel for us in our community and has done a lot of the research in regards to land use for Pabineau First Nation, as well as Eel River Bar, and as well as all the Mi'kmaq bands in New Brunswick. But we've been able to basically hide him and keep him for us, so we've been making sure that he stays with us and keep him employed with us because he provides a lot of service for us, and he's really a good worker in our community and does a lot of stuff for us. I just wanted to talk a little bit about Pabineau First Nation itself, and I've given a presentation. I think everybody has one in front of you. You'll look and you'll see that we've developed in Pabineau First Nation, we have an Economic Development Corporation and Pabineau First Nation. The reason we've done that is because we want to keep business and politics separate. And it's really important because what will happen is you develop businesses in a political entity, you often rob from Peter to pay Paul. We don't want that to happen. What happens is the economic branch stays in its own, it creates its own wealth, and it generates wealth to the community and gives it on an as need and as can basis. So that way, you don't have to worry about being broke because your community is always going to get money, but it's going to be at whatever level that the Pabineau First Nation Economic Development Corporation is able to support the First Nation community. So that's really important because it makes sure that you're not in economic griefs at any time and you're operating within what your budget is and your constraints. So it's very important to do that. And it keeps politics out of decision making. So in other words, what happens is for our budget, it's based on what we get from money, not on if you vote for me, if you don't vote for me. These are some of the things that you run into within First Nation communities. If you look on the next page, you'll see that there's a presentation of MOUs. These MOUs are basically memorandums of understanding. If you look there, we've signed probably under the Mi'kmaq Logistics, which are basically companies that provide support for us. So in other words, when we bid on contracts, these are the companies that we utilize when we bid on contracts. So they provide that service for us of actually bidding and actually making us enable. The emperor has to have clothes, as my brother says, and this is what it allows us to do because obviously we're a small First Nation community of 400 people. We're not a lot of people, so we had to create that capacity. So by working with these companies, what they do is they bid on a contract on our behalf. So even though we don't have boots on the ground on the bidding process, we are bringing funding back when we win a contract, and that money comes back to the community and allows us to employ people in our community and to actually supply services to our elders and our youth in our communities. When you look at the green energy, which is the next page, you'll see the MOUs that we've actually signed. There's over 40. Out of these, we've probably reached a point of about 6 actually standing agreements that we actually have now. And they're growing every time we actually work. As the green energy sector grows, there's more opportunity for everybody. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that because I think there's opportunity for Belledune as well. The next page, when you look at it, you'll see that this is what I really want to stress. It's important that we're not always chasing money. And it's important that you always look at things from a social, cultural, environmental, and then economic point. When I talk about social, it's having the acceptance of a project amongst the people that you're actually where you're going to be operating that project. You want to make sure that people are comfortable with that project and that you're moving it forward in the benefit of not only the company, but of the people in the region. And if there's major concerns, you try to address those concerns. i.e., I'll give you some examples of what we've done. There was a wind project that we actually worked with in Rexton. There was a concern of where we were putting it. We went and we moved it. Now, was there a cost associated with that? Yes. But it was more of a social acceptance for the people in the region. It went from crown land to actually leased land. So we put it on leased land, which kept everybody in the region happy, and then we were able to move forward with the project. It came at a cost, but at least the project was able to move forward. So that's the social aspect. Then you have the cultural aspect. Obviously, we want to make sure that a project is something that falls within our cultural beliefs of First Nations. Environmental, which is very important for everybody, because the environment is, we always talk about First Nations, we talk about our next 7 generations. So it's very important when we look at a project that we make sure it's in line with keeping that lands and resources available for the next 7 generations. And then, of course, the final thing is economically. Does it make economic sense? Are you going to make money? Because at the end of the day, you want to have a project that's actually going to make money, but you also want to make sure that it meets all of those 4 basic pillars. On the next page, you'll see the current projects completed in various stages of advancement. I'm going to give you some of the projects that we're working on in our region, and which is our region in the north as a whole. We have Vanier Boulevard, which I don't know if anybody's had a chance to go up and see our gas station in Bathurst. We have a new one that we've opened. We have our gas station in our community. We also have a trucking company. So if you look at the next page, I'll talk a little bit about our trucking company. We're actually trucking right now with Glencore, but we're also trucking with some other companies as well. So our trucking company is actually growing more and more all the time, and we're always looking for truckers. So if anybody knows of anybody in the Beldoon region looking for a job, we're always looking for truckers. On the next page, it's just a picture of, you'll see it's our gas station. And what we're very proud of is, if you look at the next page, is we now have a Harvey's, and we are the first First Nation-owned Harvey's in Canada. So we're very proud of that. And, it's ironic because actually on the first day of opening, we were actually the biggest selling Harvey's in Canada for that day. It was astronomical. I couldn't believe it. We're only 13,000 people in Bathurst, so I don't know how we did it. Everybody must have ate at Harvey's that day. But these are things, but if you build it, they will come. That's what I always say. So, for us, we were excited. This is bringing another industry into the community. It brings something into the region, and it's creating wealth and employment within the region, which is what we all want. Some of the projects that are if you go to the next page, the current projects at various stages of advancement. This is what I really wanted to talk about. Here in Beldoon, and this concerns Beldoon, the conversion of the coal-fired power plant to biomass, that is moving forward. It's going to be there. I know it's sometimes it's like pulling teeth because people want to see things happen really fast, but there's a lot of meetings, there's a lot of negotiation that has to be done, there's financing that has to be put in place, but it's moving. Now what this will do is this will create what they call a black pellet system that will actually burn at the Port of Beldoon here with the coal. It'll be mixed in with the coal. Now, this will bring about probably 40 jobs directly at the plant, on top of what MB Power already has there, as well as probably in the trucking and the biomass aspect, possibly another 60 jobs. So there could be about 100 jobs created in the region with that particular project. It's exciting because I think that's going to be the first project we're going to see here at the Port of Beldoon. I really believe it. The next one you'll see is what they call PCAM. I don't know if anybody's familiar with electric batteries for vehicles. Well, PCAM is the positive pole of the battery. Now, we're working with a company out of Vancouver, an individual called Marco Romero. He's been working diligently on this project for the last 2 years to produce a PCAM plant here. We're trying to expand it to a CAM plant. So we're working with Marco, we're on our way to Japan shortly to talk with Panasonic. We're trying, right now, Panasonic has committed to 2 battery facilities in the United States. We're saying, why not Beldoon? Why can't we have a battery facility here? And that would create up to 1,000 jobs. Not to mention the spin-offs on the contract side and everything else. Now, the PCAM itself is smaller. If we can at least get that, that's good. But we want the whole enchilada. We want a CAM facility. And why not Beldoon? Why not here? We have lots of land, and it'll create a lot of wealth in the region. We also have a 56 megawatt wind farm that we're in actually, we're going to be signing a PPA at the end of February. Supposedly, we haven't gotten it official yet, but it's going to be out by the old Caribou site. I don't know if everybody knows where the Caribou wind farm is, but we're going to be up right next to it. And that's going to be another project that's going to create contracting opportunities, employment for about 18 months till it's up and running. There's 2 hydrogen projects that we're dealing with here at the port. You guys, I'm sure the mayor and council are familiar with NextEra and ABO Wind. Those are the 2 companies we're dealing with. They still have not, they're still moving ahead at a very slow pace, but it eventually may get there, and hopefully it does. And that's going to bring, again, more opportunity and employment within the region. There's a solar project we're working with at the Port of Beldoon, as well as a battery storage facility at the Port of Beldoon. Those are very exciting. They'll provide opportunities, and it's going to create, and we all know that we need energy. And the one problem we have right now is a lack of energy in not only in the province of New Brunswick, but right across Canada. And, we've got to do something. And anybody who believes that climate change isn't real hasn't been outside in the last couple of years. So it's really important that we start addressing this, and these are the kind of projects going to address that. Another project we're talking with is small modular nuclear reactors. I know when you talk nuclear, people get nervous, but it's small modular nuclear reactors, we're dealing with a company out of the United States called Prodigy. What they're looking at is, if you think about the North right now, does anybody know how the North is actually being powered? How they get their power up north? All the northern facilities, every little northern village, every First Nation, every military establishment up north, how they actually survive to get their power, they burn diesel. So the amount of diesel being burned is astronomical. It's actually, if you think about the amount of diesel that's being burned, that's probably the carbon emitting that's being performed it's just crazy. So how do we get rid of that? This technology puts a small modular nuclear reactor, I talk small by about 1.5 to 5, 10 biggest megawatts, on a barge. They bring it up, they put it in a bay, and it's kept there. Now, this is not new technology. The Russians and the Chinese are actually doing this right now. And if you think about it, the Americans are doing it in the sense that if you take an American nuclear aircraft carrier, it's a reactor inside an actual vessel. So this is already out there. This technology is there, and this technology is something that we've been talking with the Inuit up north, and they're very interested in this technology because the mining companies want it. Because mining companies are burning all kinds of diesel as well. And they see this as a solution. So what the Inuit are saying is, we'll buy the SMNR, we'll actually run it, take our power we need, and sell the excess power to the mining company. So there's actually a business case to actually move this forward. So that's another project that we're actually working on. Finally, on the last page, if you look at what Pabineau First Nation, I look at this all the time, and this is great. This is the synergy that goes with developing clean energy. When we talked about a long time ago, I'm sure people remember, what was that, Maritime Steel, when they came here? The one problem they had was they didn't have a financial model. He had no financing for that project. That's a problem. So you've always got to make sure when you're assigning yourself with people, or you're aligning yourself with people and companies, you want people and companies who have the financial capability to make these projects happen. And that's what's so exciting about this is we've looked at a lot of European companies. And we all know that Europe needs energy right now. They're also looking at clean steel. That's another opportunity for the Port of Belledune. So even though the smelter has closed, and that's unfortunate because that was a lot of jobs, that was a lot of people in the region. But there is a silver lining at the end that some of these projects are going to start to come to fruition. And when they come forward, that's when the region is going to prosper. And we're going to prosper together. Not only Belledune, because not all 1,000 people are going to live in Belledune. They may be living in Bathurst. They may be living in Campbellton. They may be living in Dalhousie. An hour away to travel is reasonable. That's what people used to do at the smelter all the time. So there's going to be opportunity. And these are all good paying jobs. They're not small paying jobs. They're good paying jobs. We're working right now with the community colleges to set up a curriculum because there is a specialty that's going to be needed with a lot of these different projects. And we want to make sure people are ready to go into these projects. Because if we don't keep young people in our region, we're not going to have a region. We're going to have nobody living here. But at the same time, we have to maintain that balance. And that's the challenge of maintaining that balance. And I realize it's hard sometimes, but you always have to maintain that balance when and where possible. If it can be done, why not do it? You keep everybody happy. Everybody then buys into the projects and they understand it. So I think that's what's really important, is trying to maintain that balance. And I know as leaders, because I deal with that on a daily basis, it's hard. But at the end of the day, you have to do what's right. And the social, economic, cultural, environmental, those are the pillars everybody follows. You may not be realizing you're following them, but you are doing that. And that's why as elected officials, it's important that you do that as well. So I just wanted to put that out there. I wanted to introduce Dr. DeMarche too, because I always get a chance for Luke to actually give you an idea of, he'll give you a little bit of the history. I always like about educating people about why First Nations are involved at the Port of Belledune. And Luke will give you a little bit of an insight on how this all came about and where the First Nations were positioned and where we were and how we actually came into this region. So if you don't mind, just entertain him for a second.
Good evening, everyone. Your Worship, you started out with the land acknowledgement and going back to the treaties, and that's actually what I studied for my doctorate. I looked at the Mi'kmaq treaties, the Aboriginal and treaty rights, and those treaties starting in 1726, and there was a series of them they call the Covenant Chain, because every treaty built on the one before it. The community in Pabineau was a member of those treaties. And everyone here today, we've all inherited those treaties. So we're all treaty people. And that those treaties were about, as they say, peace and friendship and good relationships. And that's something I'm extremely blessed to work for Pabineau, because we have a chief and council that want those relationships to flourish. As Chief Terry said, how can we make the region a better place? And I was able to work on the land claim for Pabineau and to look at the traditional territory. So people familiar with Bathurst, there's Indian Island, there's a small island. That was part of the community, but the community was spread throughout the territory, which actually, there's a 80-kilometer radius. And so actually that would take us all the way to kind of the eastern bank of Jacket River, so including Belledune. And you can imagine the canoe was the foremost form of transportation. So people were able to leave the harbor in Bathurst and travel throughout that territory, up the rivers, throughout those systems. And relationships were first formed with the Basque, who were the earliest traders, trading furs and fish. And then it was the French, and those were strong relationships, a lot of marriages in between the Mi'kmaq and the French, so Nicolas Denis. That was a strong relationship. And all of those relationships were happening. And I know for myself in education, I didn't actually start learning about First Nations until I was in university. That wasn't part of my curriculum. It was almost like that piece of history didn't exist. But there's a strong foundation that was there, and all of this diplomacy and relationships that come right up to modern times. And we have the Section 35 of the Constitution, which enshrines Aboriginal rights. So when projects happen, we're getting a little bit better, but every time there was a fight, a litigation, because First Nations were not included in that process. But we're coming to a place where First Nations, as Chief Terry said, are now leading these processes and trying to get more and more good industry in place that has more of an environmental dimension to that economic development. So that's what is happening, and it's really exciting to see have this opportunity to speak to you tonight. So, well, Alan.
Yeah, so I just thought it was important that Luke give you a little bit of an insight on the First Nation side. So like Luke said, the consultation process is so important for First Nations. When a project happens, we like to be involved to ensure that those 4 pillars are being followed. So when we look at it, regardless of what the project is, regardless of where it is, there's a need to consult. I'll give you an example. We're consulting right now with a school that's being built in Sussex. We're doing consultation with any type of municipality when they look at wastewater upgrades. They're always consulting with First Nations. And that's the better way to do it. Why not consult instead of having litigation? It makes more sense, right? So in leaving, I'd just like to say we're going to continue to push and work for the region. And we're going to continue to work with people in the region, with the municipalities, because we want to make sure that the people are happy, that we're happy, and that we're all prospering. Because if we don't work together, we're not going to get anything done. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Chief Richardson, and thanks, Dr. Dimash. Open up to council for comments, questions, comments.
If I may, Your Worship, I'd just like to confirm for those that are here this evening that, this council, and I've been affiliated with 4 other councils in my past political career. And I just want to say that dealing with Chief Richardson and his brother Jim on council is an absolute pleasure. And at the end of the day, people need to recognize that these are the first Aboriginals who have taken an extremely active presence. They're highly involved. You can see from the presentations that the projects they're working on, and I'm going to finish with, at the end of the day, Chief Richardson, on behalf of all, not only Beldoon, but the northern region, thank you very much for your efforts. It's, it's heartwarming to know that you're available, that you're open to discussion, that you carry that presence, and we appreciate your efforts. I'm going to finish this way, that the first project that got finished was basically Harvey's. And as I said down there that evening, working with you on economic development has been a beautiful thing.
Anyone else?
Yes, thank you for your time. It's very interesting. Marilyn and I actually went to 2 sessions this week, one at CCMB and one in Petit Rocher at the Sant Nutip, and one was on windmills. And the other one was for information on all the other projects you had mentioned. And there's so much information out there, and it's, you go to these things and you learn something all the time. So it's always nice to go to these trade shows and information sessions, because you learn something every time you go to something. So thank you very much for your time, and it was certainly another learning experience. You always get something out of these things. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yeah.
Just a couple of real quick questions. The presentation, is there anything in that you would prefer to keep disclose? Is it okay if we post that out? Just, it would be nice if the crowd could see that. Wonderful. And the only other question I had was, is there anything that sort of comes to mind when you're working with municipalities? Is there something that you'd like to see from Beldoon Council that could support the initiatives that you have going on, or is there something that could be facilitated?
I think it's working together, keeping ourselves informed. Don't be scared to reach out, ask for questions. That's what we do. We reach out, we ask the questions. I mean, if you're not sure, I'm ecstatic that you're going to those information sessions, because that's what they're about. They're about getting that information and being able to understand what's happening in the region and how it's going to benefit. And you're reaching that. Is it environmental? Is it social? Is it economical? You're answering those questions at those information sessions, right? So it's really great that you're doing that. And again, as chief, as a council, I would say, the only thing I would say is it's important that we continue to work together. I see some division now in some municipalities. I'm not going to mention where, but you see that there's some division in the sense of on certain topics, and it's important that we stay united, because these are very trying times right now. And if we don't do it united, it's going to be a lot harder. So it's really important that we stay united. We have a government in the provincial side that's willing to work with us. We have a lot of representation for the North right now. A lot of representation. We need to take advantage of that as municipalities, as First Nations, because a lot of our representatives are up north. Our Minister of Finance, our Deputy Premier. We have, a lot of our members here. Another, the whip. I mean, we've got people here. We've got to utilize them and take advantage of that. So that's what I would say, Lena.
Okay, I guess I'll finish by just a few comments. First of all, Chief Richardson, thank you very much. Dr. Marsh, thank you very much for taking the time to come up to speak to us. You always give a great presentation. Like in 2021, that's my first time meeting. I've given this story a couple of times, but I'll end with it on this particular topic. So in June of 2021, I had been sworn in for maybe 2 weeks, and Opportunities New Brunswick had a conference in Bathurst. And it was full of ministers and deputy ministers and some of the highest profile business people in the province. And the Service Commission people, I mean, the place was packed. And we had sort of presentation after presentation. And by far, the best presentation was the one that Chief Richardson and his brother Jim gave. Everybody in the room was absolutely captivated by what was said. The message was positive. It was full of detail. And after the presentation, everyone just sort of gravitated towards Chief Richardson and Jim. And at that moment, they became sort of the advocates for Northern New Brunswick. And our relationship to be as strong as it is with Chief Richardson and Pabineau First Nation and other First Nations is extremely important, and it's such a positive for us. There is no bigger advocate, I've said it before, outside of council. There isn't a bigger advocate for the village of Beldoon than Chief Richardson, Jim Richardson, and the council of Pabineau First Nation. So congratulations for all your success, and thank you for all you do. So with that, we'll continue with the meeting, and there are no statements by members of council per se, so we can move on to administration reports before we get into motions and resolutions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we did have for the social environmental grant report, there was one request that came in from the Jacket River Lions Club. We've left that resolution blank so council can fill in there. There was a request letter that came in with a quote for some repair work that they were looking at doing at their facility. So we'll leave that with council. We have motion number 16.
Can I get a mover for dash 16?
M 2025-0224-16, that CAO grant report for February 2025 be accepted as presented and recommendations approved for the following grant. I believe it was $4,850 to the Jacket River Lions Club Incorporated.
And a seconder?
I'll second it.
On the question?
I'd like to table this motion for the reason that we're looking at other avenues, so we're not sure if this is the right direction to go at this time. Maybe we could push this to the next month so that we can see, because maybe Marilyn can explain it a little bit more.
There is a concern. Oh,
Let's just get it on the table first, and then we'll discuss. So we have a motion to table. Can I get a seconder for that?
I'll second it.
Okay, on the question.
Okay, as I said in the past, that I have been up to the food bank and I have concerns. The Lions Club is leasing the building, so for them to come to council for money to fix it, I would presume that the first place to go would be to the people who own it. However, that hasn't been done, so I'd like it tabled because the building itself is not safe, so we're looking at talking with other people to see what we can do about the location.
If I may, Your Worship. The Lions Club has been an invisible organization for at least the last 20 years. I would highly suggest, even I'm in 100% in agreement with tabling the motion at this time, but I would also like to suggest that maybe a member of the Lions Club come before council at a public meeting and confirm if they're still in business even. I have never seen a Lions Club member. I have no idea who's on the executive board. I have no idea even if they still exist. So they may send a letter here saying that they exist on paper, but I can assure you that in 2014, when I was the mayor, I had the executive director of the Lions Club approach me as mayor, asking me how to find the Lions Club because even the executive director couldn't find them. So at the end of the day, you know, I'm not opposed to the request, provided it makes sense, but I believe we should have a presentation or at least a demonstration that the Lions Club is still, you know, involved.
Anyone else? Okay. On the motion, all those in favor of tabling the motion, say aye. All those opposed, say nay. Motion passed. Next is Clerk Treasurer Culligan with the financial report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Financial reports for January of 2025. So we'll start with the general operating fund. We had a balance forward, the general operating fund of $319,808.76. We had deposits through the month of January of $1,146,202.67. Interest revenue, $2,976.88. We had checks issued throughout the month, which includes payroll and all payments, of $634,957.60. Checks outstanding at the end of December 2024, $94,069.96, and outstanding at the end of January 2025, $254,930.73. This left us with a balance at the end of January of $994,891.48. In the capital reserve account, we had a balance of $2,979,289.56. In the capital operating reserve account, we had $228,935.15, and the gas tax fund balance at the end of January was $764,094.05. Accounts payable at the end of January was $28,236.85, and accounts receivable was $16,704.01. In the utility operating fund, we had a balance carry forward from December of $14,519.68. We had deposits of $4,218.18 and interest of $46.37. Checks issued and other bill payments were $7,252.57. Outstanding checks at the end of December 2024, $404.98, and at the end of January 2025, we had outstanding checks of $299. The account balance at the end of January 2025 was $11,425.68. The capital reserve account balance as of January 31st, 2025 was $93,277.13. operating reserve account balance was $4,042.81, and the trust account balance at January 31st, 2025 was $32,607.50. Accounts payable as of the end of January was $794.94, and accounts receivable, the residential accounts receivable was $12,000, and industrial, there was no accounts receivable at the end of January.
Okay, thank you, Clerk Treasurer. Can I get a mover for -17?
M 2025-02-24-17, that the financial report be accepted as presented and the accounts payable be paid.
Need a seconder?
I'll second it.
On the question, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion passed. We are up to bylaws and policies. Motions and resolutions. 9.1, the UMNB Advocacy Days. Yep.
Yeah, so just real briefly, there is the advocacy days arranged in Fredericton for next month. They are requesting, UMNB is requesting that each municipality only have 2 representatives. So we'll just need to know which 2 representatives are going so they can be registered and booked in.
Yep. So before we do that, well, actually, let's get it on the table and then I'll just have a little thing to say. Pardon me. Well, we don't have names yet, so I'm out because, as I mentioned to a couple of council members, I think at that point of year we're going to be having our science fair, Jack River School Science Fair. So that leaves, I believe, 3 for 2 spots. So my suggestion was to a couple of council members as well. If we have 3, it seems to me a couple of years ago we were in the spot, and I was able to go at the last minute, and I call them for an emergency. Say, listen, we have 3 who really want to go. Would you let us in, or we have an extra one? And they were good enough to do it. And I wonder if maybe it were worthwhile. I don't think we need to amend the motion anyway, but just maybe tomorrow if we give a call to see if we could have an extra seat at the table, and then we would send 3. We have 3 who want to go. I'm quite sure for them it's just an extra spot at the table, right? So for us it would be the expense, but I think when you have 3 members who want to go, it's an important meeting for UMNB. So that would be my suggestion.
So if we were going to do that, Mr. Mayor, then we can leave the motion exactly how it is. There is 2 spots, but we'll just name the 3 people that we have.
Okay, so let's do that then. We'll name the 3 that we have with the 2 spots and see where it goes from there. So can I get a mover?
M 2025-02-24-18, that the following members of council, Deputy Mayor Marilyn Guitar McDonald, Councillor Ronald Burke, and Councillor Lillian Carmichael are approved for the use of the per diem to attend the UMNB Advocacy Days events in Fredericton, in New Brunswick, on March 26 and 27, 2025.
And a seconder?
I'll second it.
On the question?
I have some comments. I have a real problem with sending people to conferences. I'm curious, okay, I'll back up a bit. I'm curious to know, for the people who are interested in going, what benefits they see to the village and what sessions they're most particularly interested in attending. Because we sent 2 people in November for the exact same type of conference. The advocacy days are provincial leaders talking for an hour about the great and wonderful things they're doing. We're paying $168 a night for hotels for 2 nights. We're paying $300 a day per diems for 3 days for councils to attend, $125 registration fees, mileage. Not once has anyone come back from any of these sessions or conferences and sat down with council and come up with a plan to move forward, benefits to council. Nothing comes back from these conferences at a huge expense, and it seems no real benefit. So I don't know how we keep justifying the cost, particularly for the advocacy days. The UMNB conference, the annual conference where there are multiple sessions on things like housing, addressing poverty in your communities, those types of things. I get it. But the advocacy days, I just don't see the cost-benefit ratio to the citizens of Beldoon.
Anyone want to respond? I'll respond.
I did not attend the one in November. However, my understanding of advocacy days is networking with the members that are there from the village. It's an opportunity for us to engage with other municipalities and to find out what's working for them as well as could be working for us. In my mind, it's a networking conference.
For me also, I feel that it's important that Beldoon shows up to these things to show that we're interested in like what's going on into the other communities and what these people have to say. I think that, you know, like just going to these, like the CCMP over this week, I think it's important that we put a face to the people that we're dealing with every day, and that it's important to know what's going on out there. Otherwise, if we don't go to nothing and we stay in our little village and we see nothing, then we don't know what's going on in the other communities or the area. That's my opinion. It's networking and you know, talking to other people from other communities and the government.
Just if I may, Your Worship, you know, seeing as I'm the third one, you know, at the end of the day, my fellow council members have stated it very well, so well said. But to add to that, you know, from a business point of view, and, you know, we've had presentations from Chief Richardson on how business is conducted and things of that nature. You cannot put a value on being able to discuss issues with the ministers, and these type of events will have ministers at them. In some cases, maybe even the Premier may be there. So with that said, it's an opportunity for Beldoon to demonstrate that it is part not only of the province of New Brunswick, but an interest in our community. It is an opportunity to talk directly to the ministers and that are present. And in most cases, there are deputy ministers at least at these conferences. So the ability to be able to discuss you know, municipal business face to face on a personal issue is certainly a distinct advantage, not only for Beldoon, but, you know, any municipality that's there. So at the end of the day, I believe it's a very, very strong ally and a very, very strong way to express interest in our community.
I'll speak to it. I'll step down for a second and just speak to it for a second. I think it's especially important this time. This is the first time with this government that we're going to be a full-fledged UMB. The last time we were down there, it was in the midst of election time. So the place is going to be full of ministers. They will be at that meeting. They will want to attend that meeting, and deputy ministers. Now, if you're going to, but being there, you have to seek them out, and you have to start creating relationships and have conversations. We have two important meetings coming up. One is with the Minister of Health. I believe the other one's going to be the Deputy Premier. To be able to follow that up with an in-person conversation is priceless if that's what happens. So, yeah, I think especially with this one, and again, going back to Chief Richardson, there's nobody networks more than Chief Richardson. Every place, you know, if there's somebody there that he can put forth the agenda of the North or Pabineau First Nation, he's there. And yet you have to do it. We haven't been seen enough, to be honest with you, in the past. This is not something we do enough. So, yeah, I think it's absolutely worth it, and I think it's necessary. And I think we, if you don't do these things, then ministers and deputy ministers can't put a face to a name, and you always have to advocate what's important to you. So if we can do that with our clinic, we can do that with our generating station, we can do that with some of the things that we have, our port, whatever it is, seek those ministers out, start with those relationships, have those conversations, and those trips you'll be tenfold the value of those trips down the road. So we have a motion -18, I believe, right? Do we get our first and we didn't move her and a seconder for that? I believe we did. All right, so let's go forward with the vote. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Okay. So we have a passed motion there. Now, 9.2, Smear Road West.
M 2025-02-24-19. Whereas Beldoon Council has held a public information session on January 16, 2025 to hear concerns from the residents of Beldoon regarding the impact of potential quarry trucking, and whereas these concerns have been heard by the Council of the Village of Beldoon from those in attendance, be it resolved that all construction work to the Smear Road West stop immediately unless there is an emergency, example flooding, until the developer of the quarry located on PID number 208-53396 and 206-73109 is in compliance with all the regulations required to operate a quarry as set by the standards of the province of New Brunswick and the Chaleur Regional Service Commission, and the compliance of these regulations, standards, and any conditions are verified in writing from the province of New Brunswick and the Chaleur Regional Service Commission.
You have a seconder?
So if I may, Your Worship, just a couple of comments. The resolution does not have any mention of our First Nations. This resolution was looked at by our legal department and has been confirmed okay to read publicly. The reason why the First Nations was not mentioned in the resolution, in the original one that I sent in, it was, but it was recommended by legal that we do not handcuff our First Nations in any future endeavors that they wish to proceed with by this resolution. So that is the reason why there is no mention of it in this resolution, but it is certainly something we are open and more than willing to work with our First Nations to include at any time. But the reason is simple, that we just did not want to handcuff the First Nations in any direction they wish to go.
I'd like to table this session, this item, and it's not because of what's on the table. It's because we have a new counselor that asked that we would sit down, and she would like to have more information on that. I don't feel it's fair that we ask a counselor that's just been here 2 months to vote on an item that she doesn't completely have all the information on. So I would like to have a meeting, a team meeting with council so that we can fully be all on the same page with this motion, and that she would understand completely the history and what has happened. And that's the reason I would like to table it.
I did ask that question because I believe, and I'm going to speak for me, I believe that all of us, everybody should have all the same information. I believe that we should all have it in front of us so that when we make a vote, we know what we're voting on, and we can't say, I didn't know, or I didn't remember, or I don't understand. I want to understand. I want to understand everything about Smear Road. I mean, I can't go back 10 years, but I'm not going to vote on something that I don't know what documents are in play right now. And that's why I requested that.
So we'll have a seconder.
I have two statements concerning that, Your Worship, if I may. First of all,
Let's see if let's get it on the table first.
well,
We need a seconder.
we're debating the motion. We're debating whether it's going to be tabled or not.
But we don't
don't have a seconder.
We don't have
You
a
don't,
motion on the table.
okay.
I'll second it.
Okay, so now go ahead, Councilor Burke.
Okay. Two
No
points.
debate once somebody
Yeah.
asks to table it.
Okay.
Okay, so. On the question? On the question.
Well, there's a motion to table it, so I'm not going to debate it. I'm just going to ask for the vote.
On the motion to the table, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Motion to table passed.
So can we have a set meeting? This is mostly to update all of council to be on the same page.
For the meeting. Copy your lease agreement.
Yeah, so there's motion number 20 for the lease agreement.
Mover for -20.
M 2025-02-2420, that the council accepts the extra document solution proposal for Canon Image Runner C5850i, and that the mayor and clerk endorse the agreement.
Seconder,
I'll second it.
on the question, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion passed. General correspondence.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and apologies, we do have the previous month in the package. We'll include the January one in the next package, the February one. We have the SPCA report for January 2025, the Regional Service Commission Building Report for January 2025, Universal Rail System Track Inspection for January 2025, and the Allen Paquette and Arsenault Audit Engagement Letter for correspondence in. We also received thank you from the Canadian Mental Health Association for the support and a copy of the guidebook Taking Care of You, which we have received and is in the office. That's it for communication.
Okay, we don't have a closed session, so can I get a motion to adjourn?
M 2025-02-24-21, that the meeting is adjourned at 7:58.
Seconder,
I'll second it.
on the question, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion passed, meeting adjourned. Just 1 second, and we'll take questions.